Hi, Susan here. Okay, today we're gonna cut and sew this really cute top from one of my collections. There it is. That's what's next. So hi, my faithful subscribers. I want to thank you so much for being so faithful and commenting. I'm seeing a lot of you on a regular basis commenting on my channel and my videos, and I really do appreciate that. I also want some feedback from you if there's something specific that you think that might be a good avenue for me to check out or to do a video on. So I'm encouraging you to put that also in the comments. But I love this top. This is one of my first tops that I did in one of my first collections. It's a very sexy top. It was made out of a silk jersey that was just luscious, and that silk jersey does stretch a lot more. I made it again out of this fabric that is a stretch woven, so it's not a knit. It's actually woven with some elastin in there so that there's a little bit of stretch, and it's actually stretchy on the opposite grain, which I'll show you later. And I thought it was very cute, a little bit more modern with the print. So I wanted to kind of show you how to cut and sew it, and you'll have an opportunity to purchase this pattern on my website like the other patterns that I have gone through a video with. So I hope you're going to be interested in that. So let's get started. So this pattern really consists of only 3 pieces, which is awesome. Here's the front, and it has a cowl neck, so it has this really weird shape, and it folds down in the cowl. And this is typically cut on the bias. I cut it on the bias even with my knit, and I'm going to do the same thing with this. So you have to make sure you get a print that will not bind or will not look distorted if it's cut on the bias. The other piece is the back piece. I lengthened it another ½ inch because it was made a while back and everything was very contemporary and petite. Okay, so now I have this fabric, and just to show you this fabric here, so you can see that this is the lengthwise grain. As you can hopefully can see, this is where the tightly woven edge or any kind of extra threads will show. And when I fold it over and I stretch this way, it stretches pretty decently, right? But this is the cross grain, which is the cut edge, and when I fold that in half and I stretch it, it doesn't want to stretch as much. So it's stretching more lengthwise. I have to switch the pattern around to accommodate the stretch. So on the front, I've already have it laid out here, and this is the grain line. If you can see the grain line, hopefully, right here. And I'm actually measuring this grain line, this arrow or this grain line, and making sure that it is parallel to the selvage. So that means that this piece will now be cut on the bias. So I'm flipping the grain on this pattern piece, and instead of it going this way, it is now going this way, and I'm actually checking the grain line, which is this straight line across the middle of this back piece, and making sure that it is parallel to the cut edge of the fabric, if that makes sense. This is the panel piece to clean the neckline of the back, and that is also cut on the bias. So I'm actually measuring it to the cut edge. We have all 3 pieces. Let's go ahead and cut this out. So the very first thing I have to do is clean the armholes. I'm going to take the pattern pieces off. The front. So the front is going to be a cowl neck. So this is going to fold under like that, and that's going to this will be draped like this, and then this will be the shoulders. And here is the back. And here around each one of the armholes, because I have to then top stitch it back in order to, that's the first step. So I have to have 4 threads on this machine. Now I'm going to just find the armholes on this top and narrow each one of those armholes. Try not to cut anything, or very, very little, tiny, you know what I mean? Try not to cut anything. So that's one of the armholes narrowed. Now I'm here at the iron, and I'm just going to steam it down because it kind of billows out sometimes when you narrow it. And then I'm just going to fold back just a tiny bit. I would say maybe like a 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch, just to curl it back, because we're gonna stitch that on the machine. Okay, and that's the back armholes, which are a little straighter. The front armholes are very curved. It's a very curved seam. If you can see that, it's a weird shape, but that's just the way the design of my pattern is. This is a pattern that I actually designed myself for one of my collections. Because it's such an incredibly curved edge, you can't turn back very much. You can only turn back a tiny bit. It'll allow you to do that. Let's get to the machine. Now I'm at the machine, and I have it threaded in black, and I have to top stitch, and I'm going to go on the wrong side and just top stitch back 1/4 of an inch, basically just to hold that back. So I'm going to turn that back. Top stitch it 1/4 of an inch on that narrowed edge. And there you can see, hopefully it's just top stitched. I'm going to do that to all the armhole pieces. Now we have to clean off the neckline. So it was this bias piece this wide that is going to be folded in half and pressed, which I did. And I'm going to be sewing 1/4 of an inch, and then we're going to hand sew it inside. So I have it pinned already on the neckline. I'm going to put my foot down and back stitch. Okay, so it's already stitched. We're just going to turn it back, press it, and stitch it by hand inside. Now I have it trimmed, turned back, and this is now doubled, and I'm going to hand sew it. There's no really other way to do it. Top stitching doesn't ever look good with this particular thing. So, and I am just stitching it like this. Just taking as little as possible from the right side so you don't see anything. Again, just taking a little bit from the top and a little bit from the tape, the bias band, and just doing a little slip stitch pretty close together. You can see on the other side, you can barely see anything. So now we have to take and sew the side seams together. So this is the back faced up. And we have the front faced up. And we want to match it exactly underneath the arm, because we can always adjust it if it's too long. We want to make sure that it matches exactly underneath the arm. And then if it is off at all on the bottom, we can always trim that with the narrow machine. So I'm going to be putting these two together. I'm going to be using my 4 thread on the serger, and let's get that sewn and marrowed at the same time. I'm not sure why there's such a huge discrepancy. I might have to rethink the whole grain situation with this being bias and this cross grain, because as you can see, I did lengthen my pattern, but they line up perfectly. So it is not the pattern. Just checking. And they line up perfectly, so it's not the pattern. It is the fabric stretching differently. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a good thing. I might have to readjust that. Okay, there are some terrible flaws with this top, and it's all because of the fabric. So the fabric is, like I said, a woven stretch. The original design is made out of knit. Knit fabric, or jersey fabric, will stretch pretty evenly widthwise as well as lengthwise. This fabric is not. If I'm cutting the front on a bias and I'm cutting the back on the cross grain, it is going to stretch out on the sides. My pattern is pretty much the same on both sides as I made it wider, but because this is an old pattern, a lot of extra paper over and over, I'm going to retrace this pattern, recut this top out, and start over with both pieces cut on the bias. Okay, this is the moment of truth. I recut the 2 pieces. I already did the armholes. Now I'm going to sew the side seams together with the sewing machine first and then with the serger, so that I can make sure it's accurate. The armhole with the armhole, underarm seam, matching that together at the 1/2 inch mark. So both pieces are biased now. Yes, they're matching. Now they're even at the end. Now that the hem is nice and even, I marrowed it, and I'm going to go ahead and put that 1/4 inch top stitching on there. After folding it up 1/4 inch. Because it is all biased now, you have to be very careful while stitching. This time I didn't marrow it at only once. I first sewed it with the sewing machine so I had more control over the width and the stitch. and then I narrowed it afterwards. The same with the side seams and the hem. And so let's try this on. So there it is. Because it's cut on the bias now, it is more flexible all the way around. And the cowl neck it was necessary to have the bias for the cowl neck. And it's a cute little top. And if you want, it will be on my website shortly for you to purchase the pattern. Hope you love it. If you love this, give it a thumbs up. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.